7 faces that rewrote global beauty standards. But when billions of eyes are watching, questions hit hard. Did they really just glow up? Or was there a little extra help behind the scenes? Which member's transformation went so viral that even plastic surgeons couldn't stop making reaction videos? Which one sits at number 1, the most debated face in K-pop history? We're not here to judge. We're here to break down the facts, the comparisons, and the accusations that shook the internet. From number 7 to number 1, every spot has a story that'll blow your mind. Let's go.
Number 7. Suga. Alright, kicking off our list at the very bottom, number 7, and honestly, this might be the most boring spot on this entire ranking for drama seekers, but for people who actually appreciate raw, unfiltered authenticity, this right here is pure gold. We're talking about Min Yoongi, the man the world knows as Suga, the guy who walked into big hit entertainment doors back in 2010 as a teenager from Daegu with nothing but a fire for music and a face that, let's be real, has barely changed in over a decade. And that's exactly why he's sitting at number 7, because out of all 7 BTS members, Suga is the one who has been accused of plastic surgery the least. And when I say the least, I mean it's almost comically rare. You could scroll through thousands of forum threads, dive deep into the darkest corners of Naver, Pan, Reddit, Twitter, Quora, and every plastic surgery speculation blog out there, and you'd struggle, genuinely struggle to find any serious, sustained accusation against this man's face. But why? What makes Suga so immune to the plastic surgery rumor mill that has absolutely devoured the rest of the K-pop industry? Well, let's break it down, because there are actually some really fascinating reasons behind this, and they tell us a lot about how plastic surgery accusations work in the first place. First off, let's talk about the visual evidence, or rather the lack thereof. One of the biggest reasons people accuse idols of going under the knife is the dramatic before and after effect. You know the drill. Someone digs up a trainee photo or a pre-debut yearbook picture, slaps it next to a recent red carpet shot and goes, "Explain this." It's the bread and butter of K-pop plastic surgery discourse. But here's the thing with Suga. His face from 2012 and his face in 2025 are almost eerily consistent, like suspiciously consistent in the opposite direction. His eyes, same monolid shape, same slight natural asymmetry. No double eyelid surgery, no epicanthoplasty, nothing. His nose, same width, same bridge height, same tip shape. Compare his nose in the No More Dream music video from 2013 to his nose in any recent solo performance for August D. It's the same nose. His jawline, same structure, maybe a little more defined as he lost some of his youthful baby fat through his 20s, which is literally just what happens when human beings age, but structurally identical. And this matters because in a world where high-definition 4K cameras capture every single pore on an idol's face, there's genuinely nowhere to hide. If Suga had gotten work done, the pixel detectives of the internet, and trust me, these people are thorough, would have caught it immediately. They analyze ear shapes, hairline positions, nostril angles, the distance between eyes. It's borderline forensic science at this point. And Suga passes every single test with flying colors. Now, does that mean there have been 0 accusations? Well, not exactly. There have been a handful, and I do mean a literal handful of online posts over the years suggesting that maybe, possibly, Suga might have gotten minor cosmetic procedures. The most common one? Skin treatments. Some people have pointed out that his skin looks clearer and more refined than it did during BTS's early years, especially around 2013 to 2015, when you could see more visible texture, occasional breakouts, and uneven tone in high-resolution photos. But here's where we need to pump the brakes and apply some critical thinking, because there's a massive difference between plastic surgery and skincare. Suga going from the skin of a broke, sleep-deprived trainee surviving on ramen and 4 hours of sleep to the skin of a multi-millionaire with access to world-class dermatologists, premium skincare products, professional facials, and an actual healthy lifestyle is not plastic surgery. That's called having money. That's called growing up. That's called finally being able to take care of yourself after years of grinding in poverty-level trainee conditions. And honestly, the fact that this is the strongest evidence anyone has ever been able to come up with against Suga tells you everything you need to know about how clean his record really is. Another factor that plays heavily into why Suga avoids accusations is his aesthetic persona. Let's be real. In the K-pop industry, visual presentation is everything. Members are often categorized into roles, and the visual members, the ones positioned as the face of the group, the ones who get the most close-up shots, the ones whose looks are constantly scrutinized, naturally attract the most plastic surgery speculation. Suga has never been officially designated as a visual member of BTS. His brand, his identity, his entire aura has always been built around his music. He's the producer. He's the lyricist.
Number 6. Jin. Now, this is where things start getting interesting, because at number 6, we've got a name that might genuinely shock you. We're talking about Kim Seok-jin, the man literally nicknamed Worldwide Handsome, the official visual of BTS, the guy whose face has been analyzed by actual scientific studies using the golden ratio. The member who once made a random stranger on the street go viral just because they looked at him. And yet, he's only at number 6, the second least accused? How does that even make sense? How does the most visually prominent member of the biggest boy band in human history somehow dodge the plastic surgery rumor mill more than 5 of his own group mates? Well, buckle up, because the answer is actually way more fascinating than you'd expect, and it reveals something really profound about how beauty, perception, and suspicion work in the K-pop world. Let's start with the obvious. Kim Seok-jin is, by virtually every conventional beauty standard on the planet, an extraordinarily good-looking human being. This isn't opinion. This is borderline scientific consensus at this point. In 2018, a viral analysis using the Greek golden ratio of beauty, a mathematical formula that measures facial symmetry and proportion, ranked Jin's face as one of the closest to perfect proportions ever recorded in a public figure. His face was measured at approximately 99.7% symmetrical. His eyes, nose, lips, jawline, and forehead all sit in almost mathematically precise positions relative to each other. Plastic surgeons in South Korea, the United States, and Europe have literally used his face in consultations as a reference point, not because they think he's had work done, but because his natural facial structure represents what many patients are trying to achieve through surgery. And that right there, that's the ultimate irony, and it's the key to understanding why Jin sits so low on this list. See, plastic surgery accusations in K-pop follow a very specific pattern. They almost always begin with a noticeable change. Something looks different. The nose seems narrower, the eyes seem bigger, the jawline seems sharper. People pull up old photos, compare them to new ones, and the difference becomes the evidence. But with Jin, the evidence simply doesn't exist in any compelling way. And here's why. This man has been photographed, filmed, and documented since he was literally scouted on the street near Jungkook University back in 2011. The story is legendary at this point. A big-hit entertainment casting manager spotted him getting off a bus and was so struck by his appearance that they chased him down the street. He was a college student, no makeup, no styling, no professional lighting, just a random guy on a bus, and he was already so visually striking that a professional talent scout physically ran after him. And if you find that original pre-debut photo of Jin from around that time, clean-faced, no filters, no professional photography, and you put it next to a 4K screenshot of Jin at the 2023 Grammy Awards or his 2025 military discharge ceremony, you know what you'll see? The same face, the same broad shoulders, the same plump lips, the same nose bridge, the same double eyelids that he's had since birth, the same jawline that's maybe a touch more defined due to natural aging and weight fluctuations, but structurally identical. It's almost frustrating for conspiracy theorists, honestly, because they want there to be something. When you're the designated visual of BTS, the member whose looks are literally part of your job, people assume there must be some artificial enhancement involved. It's almost a psychological reflex. Nobody looks that good naturally, right?
But the photographic evidence tells a brutally simple story. Jin just genuinely looks like that. Now, that's not to say there haven't been zero accusations. There have been some, and in fairness, let's address them head-on, because that's what this list is about. The most commonly cited accusation involves his nose. Over the years, a small number of online commentators have suggested that Jin's nose bridge appears slightly more refined in recent years compared to his very early debut photos from 2013. Some before and after comparison posts on Pan and various international forums have circled his nose area and claimed that the bridge looks thinner or sharper. But the problem with that accusation, and it's a problem that actual board-certified plastic surgeons have pointed out in reaction videos and analysis posts, is that the change in Jin's nose appearance can be almost entirely attributed to three non-surgical factors. Number one, weight loss. Jin's face in 2013 carried noticeably more subcutaneous fat than his face in later years.
Number 5. BTS V. Okay, now we're stepping into territory where things get really spicy, because at number 5, we're talking about a man whose face has literally been called a work of art by professional artists, mathematically impossible by beauty analysts, and proof that God has favorites by millions of fans across the globe. We're talking about Kim Taehyung, V, the member of BTS whose visuals are so otherworldly, so uniquely structured, so unlike anything the K-pop industry had ever seen before, that people genuinely couldn't decide whether his face was too perfect to be real or too unusual to be surgical. And that contradiction, that bizarre tug-of-war between he must have had work done and no surgeon on earth could create that, is exactly what makes Taehyung's position on this list so absolutely fascinating. Let's rewind to the very beginning, because the origin story matters here more than almost anyone else on this list. Kim Taehyung was BTS's hidden member. While the other members were being gradually introduced to the public through blog posts, videos, and social media teasers during BTS's pre-debut period in 2012 and 2013, Taehyung was kept completely secret. Big Hit Entertainment deliberately concealed his existence from fans until just days before BTS's official debut on June 13, 2013. And when he was finally revealed, the internet absolutely lost it, because nobody was expecting that face. In an industry where visual members typically fit a very specific, almost predictable mold, pale skin, double eyelids, high nose bridge, slim jawline, Taehyung walked in looking like something out of a Renaissance painting. His features were unconventional for Korean beauty standards of the time. He had a broader nose tip than what was typical for K-pop visuals. His eyes were deep set with a unique shape that didn't fit neatly into the double eyelid or monolid categories. His bone structure was heavier, more sculptural, with prominent cheekbones and a jawline that looked like it was literally chiseled from marble. He was, in every sense of the word, different. And in K-pop, being different means being scrutinized. Now, here's where the plastic surgery discourse around Taehyung gets genuinely interesting, because unlike most idols where the accusation is they changed their face to look better, the accusations around V have always been weirdly conflicted. On one side, you've got people who claim his nose has been refined, that if you compare his very earliest pre-debut photos and high school pictures to his later career images, particularly from the Wings era around 2016-2017, his nose bridge appears slightly narrower and his nose tip slightly more defined. These comparisons have circulated on Pon-Nate, Korean community forums, Twitter threads, and YouTube analysis videos for years. Some posts have gotten hundreds of thousands of views. Some have sparked comment sections with thousands of replies. The nose is without question the #1 focal point of any V plastic surgery debate. And in fairness, if you cherry-pick the right photos, certain angles from 2013 versus certain angles from 2020, you can create a comparison that looks like something changed. But here's the critical thing that most of these viral comparison posts conveniently leave out: context, specifically the context of aging, weight fluctuation, and the dramatic transformation that happens to every single human face between the ages of 16 and 27.
Kim Taehyung was born on December 30th, 1995. When BTS debuted in June 2013, he was 17. 17! His face was literally developing. The human skull doesn't finish fully forming until the mid-20s. Cartilage in the nose continues to change and settle throughout adolescence and early adulthood. Facial fat distribution shifts dramatically as testosterone levels stabilize and baby fat naturally dissolves. This isn't speculation, this is basic human biology, and it applies to every single person reading this right now. Your face at 17 does not look the same as your face at 25. It can't. It's physically impossible. And yet, when it comes to K-pop idols, people treat any facial change between those ages as evidence of surgery. It's a fundamentally flawed methodology, and it's been the basis of probably 80% of all V-plastic surgery accusations. The second most common accusation involves Taehyung's jawline, specifically the claim that he may have undergone V-line surgery, which is ironic given his stage name is literally V. Some commentators have pointed out that his jaw appeared wider and more square in early debut photos compared to the more tapered, V-shaped appearance it took on in later years. But once again, this is almost entirely explainable by natural maturation and weight changes. Taehyung has been very open about his fluctuating weight over the years.
Number 4, RM. Alright, we're officially in the top 4 now. And if you thought things were intense before, you haven't seen anything yet. Because at number 4, we're talking about the leader himself, Kim Namjoon, the man the world knows as RM. The guy who spoke at the United Nations, who taught himself English by watching Friends, who has an IQ of 148, who essentially carried the intellectual and philosophical identity of BTS on his shoulders for over a decade. The man is a walking encyclopedia, a lyrical genius, a museum-visiting, book-reading, art-collecting polymath who redefined what it means to be a K-pop idol. But none of that brilliance, has stopped the internet from obsessing over one very specific part of his face. His nose. Let's just get straight into it, because when it comes to RM and plastic surgery accusations, the conversation begins and ends with his nose, and it has been one of the most persistent, most analyzed, and most debated topics in the entire BTS plastic surgery discourse. And unlike the members we've covered so far, where accusations were relatively mild and easily countered, the RM nose debate is genuinely more complicated, more nuanced, and way harder to dismiss with a simple, "It's just aging." Here's the timeline. And I'm going to walk you through this carefully because the details matter. During BTS's pre-debut period in their early years from 2013 to roughly 2015, Namjoon's nose had a very distinctive appearance. It was wider, with a broader bridge, a rounder tip, and a shape that was, let's be honest, not what the Korean entertainment industry typically considered ideal. In an industry obsessed with narrow, high-bridged, pin-straight noses, Namjoon's natural nose stood out. And it stood out because it was natural. It looked real. It looked human. It had character. It had the kind of organic, unrefined shape that you see in everyday people, not in surgically optimized idol faces. And a lot of fans genuinely loved that about him. It was part of what made BTS feel different from other groups. Their faces weren't cookie-cutter perfect, and that rawness felt authentic. But then, and this is where the debate truly ignites, somewhere around the 2016 to 2017 period, roughly coinciding with the Wings and You Never Walk Alone era, people started noticing something. RM's nose looked different. Not dramatically different. Not completely new face, different. But subtly, noticeably different. The bridge appeared slightly narrower. The tip appeared slightly more refined. The overall profile seemed a touch more streamlined. And the internet did what the internet does. It exploded. Comparison posts flooded Pan, Naver, Thiku, Reddit, and every K-pop forum in existence. Side-by-side photos were analyzed with the precision of crime scene investigators. Lines were drawn. Angles were measured. Shadows were scrutinized. And the consensus among accusers was clear. Kim Namjoon had gotten a rhinoplasty, a nose job, the single most common cosmetic procedure in South Korea, performed on an estimated 300,000 to 350,000 people per year in a country of 52 million. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about what the other side says, because this debate has two very passionate sides, and both have genuine arguments worth hearing. Defenders of RM's natural nose point to several critical factors. First, the weight argument, which, yes, we've discussed with other members, but it's particularly relevant for Namjoon because his weight fluctuations have been more visible than almost any other BTS member. RM has been very open about the fact that his weight has gone up and down significantly throughout his career. During certain comeback periods, he's been noticeably leaner. During rest periods, he's been fuller. And the nose, specifically the nose tip, is one of the areas most visibly affected by weight changes because the skin covering the nasal cartilage is among the thinnest on the human face. Even a small amount of subcutaneous fat loss can make a nose tip appear more refined and defined. This is documented medical fact. Dermatologists and facial anatomy experts have consistently noted that weight loss can make a nose appear narrower by up to 15–20% without any surgical intervention whatsoever. Second, defenders point to the contour argument, and in RM's case, this is actually really significant. BTS's makeup evolution from 2013 to 2017 was astronomical. During the No More Dream and Boy in Love eras, their makeup was relatively basic, foundation, maybe some eyeliner, minimal contouring. But by the Blood, Sweat, and Tears era, they were working with Korea's top makeup artists using advanced techniques, including nose contouring, which involves applying darker shades along the sides of the nose and a lighter highlight stripe down the center of the bridge. When done by professionals, and these are professionals working at the highest level of the industry, this technique can completely transform how a nose looks on camera. It can make a wide nose look narrow, a flat bridge look high, and a round tip look pointed. And it washes off at the end of the day. Third, and this is the argument that gets the least attention but might actually be the most important, the camera and lens factor. RM's face has been photographed by thousands of different cameras, at thousands of different angles, with thousands of different lenses, across thousands of different lighting conditions. And the nose, being the most three-dimensional feature on the human face, the part that literally protrudes from the face, is the feature most affected by lens distortion, angle changes, and lighting direction. A telephoto lens shot from 20 feet away will make RM's nose look completely different than a wide-angle lens shot from 3 feet away. This is an opinion. This is optical physics. Photography students learn this in their first semester. And yet, the viral comparison posts almost never account for this variable. They'll take a 2013 photo shot on a basic camera at a fan meeting from 3 feet away and compare it to a 2020 photo shot by a professional photographer with an 85mm lens from across a red carpet. And they'll say, look, the nose changed. Well, yeah, it looks different because you're literally comparing two completely different photographic contexts. But here's where I have to be fair, because being fair is what this list is about. The accusation side has arguments too, and some of them aren't so easy to wave away. The most compelling argument from accusers involves not just photos, but video. Specifically, moving footage from fan cams, variety show appearances, and behind-the-scenes content where lighting and angles are constantly shifting. Some accusers have compiled video comparisons showing RM's nose from multiple angles across different years, arguing that the change in his nose bridge width is consistent regardless of angle, meaning it can't simply be explained by lens distortion or contouring. They argue that if it were just makeup, you'd see the contour break down in certain extreme close-ups or during sweaty performance footage where makeup slides. And in some of these comparisons, the nose does appear consistently different across controlled conditions. It's not conclusive evidence. It's not proof. But it's also not nothing. There's also the broader cultural context to consider. South Korea has the highest rate of plastic surgery per capita in the world. Rhinoplasty is the second most common procedure after double eyelid surgery. It's so normalized that it's often given as a graduation gift to high school students. In the K-pop industry specifically, cosmetic enhancement is widely understood to be common, even if rarely openly discussed. The stigma isn't about getting surgery, it's about admitting it. Multiple industry insiders, former trainees, and even some idols from other groups have spoken anonymously about the pressure to undergo procedures, particularly during training periods when agencies want their future idols to look camera-ready. None of this means RM specifically had anything done, but it does mean that the possibility isn't outlandish. It's not some wild conspiracy theory. It exists within a very real, very well-documented cultural framework. What makes RM's case particularly interesting is how he has handled the accusations. Unlike some idols who've directly denied plastic surgery claims, Namjoon has largely ignored them. He hasn't addressed them in interviews. He hasn't made defensive statements. He hasn't posted pre-debut photos as proof. His approach has been, essentially, to let the music speak and let the face be whatever people want to interpret it as. And in a weird way, that approach has actually served him well, because engaging with plastic surgery accusations, as many idols have learned, often draws more attention to the topic rather than less. By staying silent, RM has denied the debate the oxygen it needs to truly ignite into a full-blown scandal. His silence isn't an admission. It's a strategy. Or maybe, and this is the reading that many ARMY fans prefer, it's simply indifference. Maybe Kim Namjoon, the man who reads Nietzsche and discusses art philosophy in his spare time, simply does not care what the internet thinks about his nose. Maybe his identity is so firmly rooted in his intellect, his artistry, his leadership, and his creative vision that the shape of his nose bridge is genuinely, fundamentally irrelevant to him. And honestly, that tracks. This is the same man who, when asked about beauty standards in a UN speech, talked about learning to love yourself. Not your face, not your features, but yourself. The whole self, including the parts that don't fit neatly into Number 3, J-Hope. Okay, take a deep breath. Because we are now entering the top 3, and this is where the plastic surgery discourse around BTS goes from interesting debate to full-blown warfare. At number 3, we have Jung Hoseok, J-Hope, BTS's main dancer, the group's self-proclaimed sunshine, the man whose energy could power a small city, whose smile has been scientifically proven to boost serotonin levels through screen radiation. Okay, maybe not scientifically, but emotionally? Absolutely. J-Hope is warmth. J-Hope is positivity. J-Hope is the guy who makes you feel like everything's going to be okay just by existing in the same timeline as you. But behind all that radiant sunshine, there's a storm of accusations that has followed this man for years, and unlike the members we've discussed so far, the case against J-Hope is one of the hardest to dismiss, the most visually striking, and the most widely debated not just among fans, but among actual medical professionals who've weighed in publicly. And all of it, comes down to his nose. Let me take you back, way back, to a time before Dynamite, before Chicken Noodle Soup, before On the Street, before the Hope World mixtape, before J-Hope became one of the most recognizable performers on the planet. We're going back to pre-debut Hoseok, the kid from Gwangju who was already a legendary street dancer in his local scene before big hit entertainment ever came calling. Pre-debut photos of J-Hope exist. Quite a few of them, actually. Photos from his middle school days, his high school years, his time as a member of a local dance crew called Neuron before he became a trainee. And in these photos, and this is just an objective observation, not a judgment, his nose looks markedly different from what it looks like today. In his earliest photos, Hoseok's nose was wider, noticeably wider. The bridge was lower and flatter, the tip was rounder and more bulbous, and the overall shape was what cosmetic surgeons would clinically describe as a low dorsum, wide alar-based nose, a nose type that is extremely common in East Asian populations and is, let's be absolutely clear, a completely normal and perfectly fine nose shape. There is nothing wrong with that nose, but it is a nose that looks distinctly different from the nose J-Hope has today. And that difference, that undeniable, visible, photographic difference, is what puts him at number 3 on this list. Because today, J-Hope's nose presents with a noticeably higher bridge, a narrower base, a more refined tip, and an overall silhouette that is dramatically more streamlined than what appears in his pre-debut images. And when I say dramatically, I'm not exaggerating. This isn't a subtle change that requires squinting and pixel zooming to detect. This is a difference that's visible in casual, unstaged photos, in variety show screenshots, in airport fan cams, in behind-the-scenes content where lighting is uncontrolled and makeup is minimal. The difference is there, and it's consistent across hundreds of photos spanning different years, different contexts, different cameras, and different conditions. Now, the usual defenses that we've applied to other members, aging, weight loss, contouring, lens distortion, are significantly harder to apply here, and that's an important distinction to make. Let's go through them one by one. Aging and facial maturation? Yes, faces change from teenage years to adulthood. Yes, baby fat dissolves. Yes, cartilage can subtly shift. But the degree of change visible in J-Hope's nose goes considerably beyond what most medical professionals consider within the range of normal developmental variation. The bridge height, in particular, is a structure primarily determined by bone and cartilage. While soft tissue changes can slightly alter the appearance of a nose bridge, actual height increase, where the bridge appears genuinely taller and more projected, is extremely difficult to achieve without either surgical augmentation, implant or cartilage graft, or injectable fillers. Bone doesn't grow taller after adolescence. That's not how skeletal development works. Weight loss. While it can make a nose tip appear more refined, it doesn't significantly alter bridge height or alar width. J-Hope's weight has certainly fluctuated over the years, but even in periods where he's been at similar body weights, his nose has appeared consistently different from its pre-debut shape. The weight explanation, while valid for subtle changes, simply can't account for the magnitude of change visible here. Contouring? This is actually the strongest defense argument in J-Hope's case, and it deserves serious consideration. Professional nose contouring can create the illusion of a narrower, higher-bridged nose. And BTS's makeup artists are among the best in the world. But here's the problem. Contouring works by creating shadows and highlights that trick the eye under specific lighting conditions. In harsh, direct, or unflattering lighting, like airport photos, casual V-Live streams, or certain behind-the-scenes footage, contouring breaks down. The shadows don't sit correctly. The highlight gets washed out. The illusion falls apart. And in J-Hope's case, his nose appears consistently different from his pre-debut shape, even in these uncontrolled conditions. That significantly weakens the contouring argument, though it doesn't eliminate it entirely. This is precisely why J-Hope's case has attracted attention from actual plastic surgeons and cosmetic experts online. Multiple Korean and international surgeons have posted analysis videos on YouTube examining J-Hope's before and after photos. And while opinions aren't unanimous, they never are in these situations, a notable number of professionals have suggested that the changes visible in his nose are consistent with a rhinoplasty procedure. Specifically, several surgeons have pointed to what appears to be dorsal augmentation, the building up of the nose bridge using either a silicone implant or cartilage graft, combined with possible alar reduction, which is a procedure that narrows the base of the nostrils. These are among the most commonly performed rhinoplasty techniques in South Korea, and they produce results that are remarkably consistent with the changes visible in J-Hope's nose. Now, and this is crucial, professional analysis from photos and video is not the same as a clinical diagnosis. No reputable surgeon would claim to definitively diagnose a procedure from photographs alone. Lighting, angle, camera lens, and dozens of other variables make photo-based analysis inherently unreliable. Every surgeon who's commented on J-Hope's case has included this caveat. So while professional opinions lean in a certain direction, they remain opinions, not conclusions. What makes J-Hope's position on this list particularly poignant is the emotional and cultural dimension of the conversation. Because here's the thing that gets lost in all the before and after comparisons and surgical analysis. If J-Hope did choose to have his nose done, and that's still an if, it would have been a deeply personal decision made in the context of an industry and a culture where appearance is not just valued but weaponized. J-Hope has spoken, on multiple occasions, about his struggles with self-confidence, particularly regarding his looks. In early BTS content, interviews, variety shows, behind-the-scenes footage, you can see moments where Hoseok's bright, sunny exterior cracks just slightly when the topic turns to visuals. He was frequently ranked last in visual rankings by Korean media and netizens during BTS's early years. He was called ugly in online comments. He was compared unfavorably to his groupmates. Anti-fans specifically targeted his appearance in ways that were cruel, relentless, and dehumanizing. Imagine being a teenager, because that's what he was, reading thousands of comments every single day telling you that you're the least attractive member of your group, that your nose is too wide, that your face doesn't belong in K-pop, that you're dragging the group's visual average down. Now imagine having access to a solution. Imagine living in a country where that solution is normalized, affordable, and socially accepted. Imagine your career, your livelihood, your dream, everything you've worked for since you were a child, being tied to how you look on camera. What would you do? And that's the question that makes the J-Hope plastic surgery debate so much deeper than just did he or didn't he. Because regardless of the answer, the reason behind any potential decision tells a profoundly human story about self-image, industry pressure, societal beauty standards, and the impossible position that K-pop idols are placed in from the moment they step into the public eye. There's also a fascinating redemption arc in J-Hope's visual narrative that deserves recognition. Over the years, as BTS's popularity exploded and J-Hope's talent became undeniable, public perception of his appearance shifted dramatically. The same forums that once mocked his looks began celebrating them. Fashion brands came calling. Magazine covers featured his face prominently. His unique visual identity, sharp, angular, striking, became an asset rather than a liability. He went from being dismissed as the ugly member to being recognized as one of the most stylish, most photogenic, and most visually dynamic performers in the industry. Whether surgery played a role in that transformation or not, the transformation itself is undeniable, not just in his appearance, but in how the world perceived him. And there's something deeply satisfying about that. About a man who was told he didn't meet the standard becoming the standard. About sunshine breaking through the clouds, not by changing who he is, but by forcing the world to change how it sees. Number 2. Jungkook. We're here. Number 2. The penultimate spot on our list. And when I tell you that this one is a beast of a debate that has consumed millions of hours of internet discourse, generated more comparison posts than probably any other male K-pop idol in history, and turned one man's face into the single most documented human transformation of the digital age, I am not exaggerating. At number 2, we have Jungkook, the Golden Magne, the youngest member of BTS, the man who can sing, dance, rap, produce, direct, paint, box, film, and apparently do everything else the universe has to offer. But beyond all that talent, beyond the record-breaking solo tracks, beyond Seven, spending weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, beyond being named the most searched K-pop idol on Google for years running, there is a face. A face that has undergone one of the most dramatic, most visible, most thoroughly documented transformations in the entire history of popular entertainment. And that transformation has fueled a plastic surgery debate so intense, so divided, and so emotionally charged that it has literally split the internet in half. Let's set the stage with one absolutely critical piece of context that makes Jungkook's case fundamentally different from every other member on this list. Age. Jungkook was born on September 1st, 1997. When BTS debuted on June 13, 2013, he was 15 years old. 15. Not 17 like Taehyung. Not 19 like some of the Hyungs. 15. A literal child. A boy who hadn't finished puberty. A teenager whose bones were still growing, whose facial structure was still forming, whose hormones were still surging through his body, reshaping every single feature from his jawline to his cheekbones to his nose to his brow ridge. And because BTS documented everything, every practice session, every backstage moment, every V Live broadcast, every Run BTS episode, every airport arrival, every fan meeting, every photo shoot, we have what amounts to the most comprehensive visual record of a human being aging from 15 to 28 that has ever existed. There are literally thousands of high-resolution photos and videos of Jungkook's face at every single stage of his development. Every month, every year, every era, it's all there. And that unprecedented level of documentation is both the fuel for the plastic surgery accusations and the most powerful tool for debunking them. Because it cuts both ways. It lets accusers point to specific moments where his face appears to change, but it also lets defenders show the gradual, continuous, utterly natural progression that connects every single one of those moments. So what exactly are the accusations? Let's break them down, because unlike some members where the debate centers on one feature, the Jungkook plastic surgery discourse covers multiple areas, and each one has generated its own entire sub-debate with dedicated analysis posts, videos, and forum threads. Accusation number 1, the nose. This is the big one. the centerpiece of virtually every Jungkook before and after comparison post ever created. If you pull up a photo of Jungkook from 2013, doe-eyed, round-cheeked, baby-faced 15-year-old Jungkook, and put it next to a photo from 2023 or beyond, his nose looks dramatically different. In 2013, his nose was wider, softer, with a lower bridge and a rounder, more bulbous tip. In recent years, his nose appears narrower, more refined, with a higher bridge and a more sculpted tip. The difference is visible. It's undeniable. And it's the primary exhibit in every prosecution against Jungkook's natural beauty. Accusers argue that the degree of change exceeds what puberty and natural aging can account for, and that the specific nature of the change, particularly the apparent increase in bridge height and narrowing of the tip, is consistent with rhinoplasty. They point to specific transition points, where the nose appears to shift more rapidly than gradual aging would typically produce. Some particularly dedicated analysis posts have identified what they claim is a specific window, roughly 2016 to 2018, where the most noticeable changes occurred. But here is where Jungkook's unique situation, his age at debut, becomes absolutely critical to the defense. Because what happened between 2013 and 2018? He went from being 15 to being 21. He went through the entirety of male puberty on camera. And male puberty doesn't just make your voice deeper and put hair on your chest. It fundamentally restructures the face. Testosterone causes the brow ridge to become more prominent. It causes the jawline to widen and square off. It causes the mid-face to lengthen. And yes, it causes the nose to change. The nasal bones and cartilage continue developing well into the early 20s, and testosterone specifically promotes the growth of nasal cartilage, which can make a nose appear longer, more projected, and more defined. This is basic endocrinology. Every single human male goes through this process. The difference is that most of us don't have high-definition cameras documenting every stage of it. Multiple board-certified plastic surgeons who've analyzed Jungkook's transformation have specifically noted that the changes in his nose fall within the range of what can be explained by pubertal development and post-adolescent maturation. Dr. Gary Linkoff, a New York-based facial plastic surgeon with millions of YouTube subscribers, did a detailed analysis of Jungkook's face and concluded that while the changes are visually striking, they're consistent with the kind of nasal maturation that occurs in males between ages 15 and 25. He specifically noted that Jungkook's nose shows gradual, continuous change rather than an abrupt shift, which is a hallmark of natural development rather than surgical intervention. Accusation number 2, the jawline. This one's almost a carbon copy of the nose debate in terms of its dynamics. Young Jungkook had a rounder, softer, more cherubic face because he was a child. Adult Jungkook has a sharper, more angular, more defined jawline because he's a grown man who works out intensively and maintains a very lean physique. Accusers point to the dramatic difference and cry, V-line surgery. Defenders point to the thing called puberty and the well-documented fact that Jungkook became an absolute fitness fanatic in his late teens and early 20s, dramatically reducing his body fat percentage and revealing the bone structure that was always underneath the baby fat. His shirtless workout photos and boxing training footage make it abundantly clear that this is a man who sculpts his body through intense physical discipline. A lean, muscular body means a lean face. A lean face means a visible jawline. This isn't surgery. This is the gym. Accusation number 3, the eyes. Some commentators have suggested that Jungkook may have had subtle work done on his eyelids, specifically, that his eye shape appears slightly different in recent years compared to his debut era. His eyes appear somewhat larger, more open, and more defined. But this accusation has always been the weakest of the 3, and even most accusers acknowledge it. Jungkook has always had naturally large, expressive eyes. They were one of his most distinctive features even at 15. The perceived change in his eyes is almost certainly attributable to a combination of factors. Professional eye makeup techniques that have evolved dramatically since 2013. The natural opening of the eye area that occurs as facial fat decreases with age, and the development of a slightly more visible eyelid crease that many East Asian men experience naturally during their 20s. Multiple dermatologists have noted that the development or deepening of an eyelid crease without surgery is extremely common in East Asian populations, particularly in males as they age and the skin around the orbital area naturally thins. What makes the Jungkook debate so volcanic compared to other members, though, isn't just the visual evidence. It's the emotional stakes. Jungkook isn't just any idol. He's the magne, the baby, the one the other members raised. The one who was literally a child when this all started. Armies have watched him grow up in real time, and there's an almost parental protectiveness that surrounds him. Accusing Jungkook of plastic surgery doesn't just feel like criticizing an idol. It feels like attacking a kid who grew up in public, who never had the luxury of an awkward phase happening in private, who had every pimple, every bad hair day, every stage of his adolescent development broadcast to millions of people. And that protectiveness generates a ferocious defense. Army fan accounts have created compilation threads with hundreds of photos arranged in strict chronological order, sometimes month by month, showing Jungkook's face gradually, continuously, organically changing with zero abrupt shifts or unexplained jumps. These threads are works of art in their own right. They demonstrate, with exhaustive visual evidence, that there is no single moment where Jungkook's face suddenly looks different. The transformation is smooth, gradual, and entirely consistent with natural aging from adolescence to adulthood. These chronological compilations have been praised by medical professionals as some of the best publicly available demonstrations of how dramatically a male face changes during and after puberty. There's also the matter of Jungkook's own behavior regarding his appearance. Unlike idols who care for number 1 Jimin. This is it. The moment you've been waiting for. The summit of the mountain. The eye of the storm. The single most controversial, most analyzed, most passionately debated, and most relentlessly scrutinized face in the entire history of Korean pop music, and arguably, in the history of global entertainment itself. At number 1, sitting on the throne that nobody wants but everybody talks about, Park Jimin. Let that name sit with you for a second. Park Jimin. The man whose smile has made millions of people fall in love. The man whose voice, that impossibly ethereal, aching, heavenly voice, has brought grown adults to tears in stadium aisles. The man whose dancing is so fluid, so controlled, so devastatingly precise that professional choreographers have called him one of the greatest performers of his generation. A man of extraordinary, almost overwhelming talent. And yet, despite all of that, the single most common search query associated with his name on Google, Naver, Baidu, and virtually every major search engine on Earth is not Jimin dancing. It's not Jimin vocals. It's not Jimin discography. It's Jimin plastic surgery. And that heartbreaking, infuriating, endlessly complicated reality is why Park Jimin sits at number 1 on this list. Not because there's definitive proof. Not because any surgeon has confirmed anything. But because the sheer scale of the accusation, the volume of the debate, the intensity of the analysis, and the cultural impact of the discourse surrounding his face is simply unmatched by any other BTS member, or, frankly, any other idol in K-pop history. Let's start from the very beginning, and I mean the very beginning, because Jimin's story with plastic surgery accusations didn't start when BTS got famous. It started before BTS even existed. Park Jimin was born on October 13, 1995, in Jumjeong District, Busan, South Korea. He grew up as a dedicated student of contemporary dance, attending Busan High School of Arts as a top student in the modern dance department. Pre-debut photos of Jimin from his Busan days exist: school photos, dance performance photos, casual pictures with friends, and they show a round-faced, chubby-cheeked teenager with smaller eyes, a wider and flatter nose, and an overall softness to his features that is completely typical of a Korean teenage boy who hasn't yet fully matured. He was cute. He looked his age. He looked normal. And he looked distinctly different from the Park Jimin that the world would eventually come to know. When Jimin arrived at Big Hit Entertainment as a trainee in 2012 and subsequently debuted with BTS in June 2013, he was 17 years old and already in the early stages of what would become the most watched, most debated facial transformation in K-pop history. But the transformation didn't happen overnight. It happened in stages, and each stage brought a new wave of accusations. each one louder and more detailed than the last. The accusations against Jimin are not focused on just one feature. They cover virtually his entire face, and each feature has generated its own dedicated community of believers and defenders. Let's break them down systematically, because the depth of this discourse is genuinely staggering. The nose. This is ground zero. The epicenter. The feature that has generated more analysis posts, more comparison screenshots, more YouTube reaction videos, and more heated forum arguments than any other single facial feature of any K-pop idol ever. In Jimin's earliest debut photos and music videos, No More Dream, We Are Bulletproof PT2, and oh, his nose had a wider bridge, a broader base, a rounder tip, and an overall shape that was naturally proportioned to his fuller, rounder face. It was a perfectly normal nose. A nose that millions of Korean men have. A nose that fit his face harmoniously. Fast forward to the Blood, Sweat, and Tears era in 2016, and then more dramatically to the DNA and Fake Love eras in 2017-2018, and Jimin's nose appears markedly different. The bridge looks higher and narrower. The tip appears more pinched and refined. The base seems reduced. The overall profile is sleeker, more streamlined, more sculpted, a word that appears in virtually every analysis post ever written about his nose. And the change didn't stop there. By the Dynamite and Butter eras in 2020-2021, and continuing through his solo work on Face in 2023 and Muse in 2024, his nose appeared to have undergone further refinement. Some accusers have argued that Jimin hasn't had just one rhinoplasty, but potentially multiple revision procedures over the years, a claim that's extremely difficult to verify from photos, but that has gained significant traction in online discussions. Board-certified plastic surgeons who've analyzed Jimin's nose have offered a range of opinions, but a notable number have suggested that the changes are consistent with surgical intervention. Dr. Anthony Yoon, an American plastic surgeon with one of the largest social media followings in the medical community, analyzed Jimin's before and after photos in a YouTube video that garnered millions of views, and stated that while he couldn't be certain without an in-person examination, the changes in Jimin's nose, particularly the apparent bridge augmentation and tip refinement, were highly suggestive of rhinoplasty. Korean surgeons have offered similar assessments, with several noting that Jimin's nose appears to show characteristics of what's called an open rhinoplasty with dorsal augmentation and tip plasty, one of the most sophisticated and commonly performed nose job techniques in Seoul's Gangnam district. But the defense? Oh, the defense is fierce. Army defenders have assembled what can only be described as encyclopedic counter-arguments. Thousands of photos arranged chronologically showing gradual, continuous change. Videos demonstrating how Jimin's nose looks completely different depending on whether he's smiling, neutral, or making certain expressions, because the nose is not a static feature. It's made of cartilage and soft tissue that moves, compresses, and stretches with every facial expression. When Jimin smiles, and he has a wide, full smile, his nose naturally spreads. When his face is relaxed, the same nose appears narrower. Many comparison posts, defenders argue, deliberately select smiling photos from the early years and neutral expression photos from recent years to exaggerate the apparent difference. And honestly, they have a point. Expression matching is a critical variable that gets ignored in probably 90% of viral comparison posts. The eyes, the second most debated feature, and one that's almost as contentious as the nose. Pre-debut and early debut Jimin had what are clinically described as monolid or single eyelid eyes, smaller appearing, without a visible crease in the upper eyelid. This is an extremely common eye shape in East Asian populations and is, of course, completely normal and beautiful. But over the years, Jimin's eyes have appeared progressively larger, more open, and more defined, with what looks like a visible double eyelid crease that wasn't apparent in his earliest photos. The accusation? Double eyelid surgery, blepharoplasty, the single most commonly performed cosmetic procedure in South Korea, with an estimated 500,000 or more procedures performed annually. Accusers argue that the change in Jimin's eyelid structure is too dramatic to be explained by natural factors alone, particularly because monolid to double eyelid transitions, while they can happen naturally, are relatively uncommon in adults and typically don't produce the degree of change visible in Jimin's case. Defenders counter with several arguments. First, they point out that Jimin's eyelids have always shown variability. Even in early photos, his eyelid crease appears to come and go depending on the photo, the day, his level of fatigue, and whether his eyes are swollen, a common occurrence in K-pop idols who sleep irregularly and consume sodium-heavy Korean diets. Second, they note that eyelid tape and glue, cosmetic products that temporarily create a double eyelid crease, are extremely commonly used in K-pop and could explain the inconsistency in his eyelid appearance. Third, they argue that weight loss can affect the eyelid area, with fat loss around the orbital region sometimes revealing a crease that was previously hidden under fuller tissue. The jawline. The third pillar of the Jimin plastic surgery debate. Early Jimin had a noticeably rounder, wider, more square jaw. Current Jimin has a dramatically more tapered, V-shaped jawline that is sharper, more angular, and more refined. The accusation, jaw reduction surgery, also known as mandibular angle reduction, a procedure where the jawbone is literally shaved down to create a narrower, more V-shaped facial contour. This is another extremely common procedure in South Korea, particularly among entertainment industry figures. The defense here follows familiar patterns: weight loss, facial maturation, loss of baby fat. But the magnitude of change has led even some defenders to acknowledge that this is one of the harder features to fully explain through natural factors alone. Jimin's jaw didn't just get slightly leaner. It appears to have fundamentally changed shape, from a wider, more angular structure to a narrower, more tapered one. And while weight loss can certainly make a jaw look sharper, it doesn't typically change the underlying bone structure from square to V-shaped.
And there it is, all 7, the full list, from number 7 to number 1. Suga, the untouched shadow whose consistency silenced every doubter. Jin, the worldwide handsome paradox who was born with what most people pay millions to achieve. V, the hidden member whose face was too extraordinary for the world to believe was real. RM, the leader whose nose became the most debated feature in K-pop leadership history. J-Hope, the sunshine whose transformation forced the hardest conversations about industry pressure and self-image. Jungkook, the golden Maknae who committed the unforgivable crime of growing up on camera. And Jimin, Park Jimin, the man whose face became less of a face and more of a phenomenon, a cultural battlefield where beauty standards, personal autonomy, and public obsession collided in ways that will be studied and discussed for generations. 7 men, 7 faces, 7 completely different stories, but one universal truth that ties them all together. And it's a truth that goes way beyond BTS, way beyond K-pop, and way beyond plastic surgery. And that truth is this: we live in an era where human faces have become public property, where a 16-year-old boy can walk into a camera frame and unknowingly sign away the rights to his own reflection, where every pore, every angle, every shadow on a human face becomes evidence in a trial that never ends, judged by a jury of millions who have never met the defendant, never touched their skin, never looked into their actual eyes, but somehow feel qualified to deliver a verdict on what's real and what's fake. And here's the uncomfortable question that this entire list has been building toward, a question that most people don't want to answer honestly. Why do we care? Why does it matter whether an idol had their nose done? Why does it matter whether a jawline was shaped by genetics or by a surgeon's hand? What exactly changes about the music, the performance, the artistry, the emotional connection if a face was altered? Does fake love hit less hard if the person singing it had a rhinoplasty? Does Spring Day make you cry less if the vocalist's eyelids were surgically creased? Does Jungkook's falsetto lose its power if his jaw was shaved? Does J-Hope's dancing become less breathtaking if his nose bridge was augmented? The answer, obviously, is no. And yet, we can't stop asking. We can't stop comparing. We can't stop zooming into pixels and drawing circles around nostrils and measuring the distance between eyebrows with ruler apps on our phones.
And maybe that says less about BTS and more about us, about our addiction to authenticity, or at least to the illusion of authenticity, about our need to categorize beauty as either earned or cheated, about the strange, contradictory way we worship perfection while simultaneously punishing anyone we suspect of pursuing it artificially. BTS themselves, through their music, have addressed these very themes with a depth and honesty that most artists never attempt. The entire Love Yourself trilogy, one of the most commercially successful and culturally impactful album series in music history, was built on a single radical premise: that you are enough, that your face, your body, your flaws, your insecurities, your scars, visible and invisible, are enough, that you don't need to change for the world because the world's standards were never designed to make you happy, they were designed to make you consume. And the bitter irony, the irony that cuts deepest, is that the very men who delivered that message have been subjected to more appearance-based scrutiny than perhaps any other group of human beings alive. The men who told the world love yourself have been told in return, but first explain your nose. So, as we close out this list, I want to leave you with something that isn't a verdict, because a verdict was never the point. The point was the conversation. The point was to look at the facts, the context, the culture, the pressures, the biology, the technology, and the deeply human stories behind each of these 7 faces, and to understand that nothing about this topic is simple. Nothing is black and white. Every accusation exists within a context of industry pressure, cultural norms, technological changes, natural aging, and personal autonomy that makes definitive judgments not just impossible, but inappropriate. Whether any of these men have had cosmetic procedures or not, they have given the world something that no surgery can create: music that heals, performances that inspire, and a connection with their fans that has transcended language, borders, culture, and time. That is their legacy, not their noses, not their jawlines, not their eyelids, their hearts. And if you've made it all the way through this list, from number 7 to number 1, through every accusation, every defense, every analysis, and every reflection, then maybe, just maybe, the next time you see a before and after comparison post of any idol pop up on your timeline, you'll pause before clicking. You'll think about the human being on the other side of that screenshot. You'll remember that behind every face is a person who feels, who hurts, who doubts, who struggles, just like you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll scroll past it and go listen to their music instead. That's all for today's ranking. If this hit you in the feels, if it made you think, if it changed even one perspective about how we talk about beauty and bodies in the entertainment industry, then this list did its job. Take care of yourselves, love yourselves, and remember, in the words of BTS themselves, I'm the one I should love in this world. Peace.